respected discussant and distinguished audience, Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
Walaikum assalam wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
I would like to congratulate IBBL and IRTI for organizing this international workshop, because from my knowledge it is after a decade that Bangladesh is going to organize such an event. I clearly remember that in 2006 there was a conference held in Bangladesh like this, and that time I was actually the volunteer of this conference, and now I am going to present the paper, and many of the paper presenters or that conference are here, so it's a matter of recalling the old memories here. So okay, we are going to discuss today this financing sustainable development goals in Bangladesh, the socio-economic role of Waqf. In this paper, I have collaborated with my group, Professor Dr. Kabir Hassan. He is here. So in this paper, we have actually discussed some conceptual issues related to Waqf and socio-economic development. Then there are some theoretical issues related to the role of Waqf in socio-economic development, and then I have tried to show the socio-economic development in Bangladesh, basically the trends since the independence, and finally this is the section where I am going to talk about the potentials of Waqf in Bangladesh, especially in the education sector, health sector, and empowering women in Bangladesh. And finally there is a set of recommendations and with the conclusions. So if you take the 2015 as a year, then this is a very remarkable year, because in this year the MDG ended, and that year we had the world community, world leaders, they came together and they come up with sustainable development goals for 2016 onwards, and it will end in 2030. And if you look at the history of achievement in terms of MDGs in Bangladesh, yes, Bangladesh has achieved a lot in terms of food security, in terms of health, education, and poverty alleviation. But still, if you look at the country, then you will find that there is a pockets of poverty in many places of the country, and there is extreme poverty persists in the country. And there are other some targets of MDGs is we cannot achieve so far. And another the challenges of MDGs, if you look at that, we have a shortage of funds, especially from foreign sources, if you talk about official development assistance and so on. And if you now look at the issue of sustainable development goals, then MDGs was actually fund is coming from the rich countries and it was going to the poor countries. That's how it was managed. But in SDGs, it is categorically emphasized on to develop your own local sources for financing various goals of sustainable development. Now again it will be the challenge, some similar challenges, that when we talk about the realizing sustainable development goals, we will have the shortage of funds. So now we have to look at multiple sources of financing sustainable development goals. Here is the point that we would like to make, that Waqf has huge potential of financing various sustainable development goals. Already there are some recent studies done by Islamic Development Bank, and even Professor Abdul Hamid also has a paper on financing sustainable development goals, how Islamic finance can be an option. So in this paper basically we will talk about education and health and gender and empowerment perspectives. Now let's define what is socio-economic development. If we talk about socio-economic development, as basically it talks about social development and economic development. I'm not going to discuss on separately, but if we talk we talk from IGI Global, how they define socio-economic development. It is the improvements of living standard and life quality inclusively and progressively in any society. It concerns about all the members of a society and their sustainable well-being through increasing the stocks of physical as well as human capital. And now let's talk about from Islamic perspectives. Here I have quoted from Sulaiman Mandal. He was former professor at Rajshahi University, who talks about it, sustainable socio-economic development is a process leading to substantial and sustainable enhancement of the material and spiritual welfare of the Muslim population in the world. So meaning that in his definition he has highlighted spiritual elements into the socio-economic development. Now if you talk about, he has also identified 9 goals from Islamic perspectives that should be considered as socio-economic development. Firstly, he emphasized on Tawhid, and then he talks about material opulence, but it should be the intermediate objective. It cannot be the ultimate objective. Ultimate objective should be the spiritual prosperity and welfare. And then when you talk about the material and spiritual welfare, then must have to be a balance between these two. And he also emphasized that enforce regular prayer and compulsory charity, zakat, and encourage voluntary sharing as socio-economic objectives from an Islamic perspective. Now let's look at this. When we talk about akaf, it could be the cash akaf, it could be also in kind, or it can be both. Here actually I am trying to make a point that okay, we need cash akaf and giving money as charity. This help people give them immediate benefit to if especially it is talking about needs, basic needs fulfillment. But here I am going to make a point based on the study of Professor M. Mannan, one of the champion Islamic economists of the world. So here I am trying to quote why we need actually invest more on in kind, because let's say if we talk about this graphical representation of the firstly we have the budget line, let's say OI and OI0. This is the budget line of a typical family. So if they buy goods in the market price, then what happens, he can buy, consume fully educational, health or all other goods. Let's say he choose point A. So this is his point. Now let's say he got money from a source, any source. It could be zakat, it could be any charity, it could be cash akaf. What will happen immediately? His budget line will jump up and it will go to OI1 and OI2, right? And now he has 3 options because he gets the money. So in that case, either he can consume totally health and education is one of the option. Another option, he can just consume all other goods, no education, or he can consume both, mixture of both. Now it's up to his choice, it's not our choice. Now let's say if he chooses point B, what is happening there? In point B, he is not consuming anything with regards to education and health. So his human capital will be poor then. But he is only consuming all other goods. So in that case, in the short run, he is benefited, but in the long run, he as well as if most of the people are behaving like this, the country will be losing. So in that case, what we can do, let's say the same amount of money, if it is goes in kind, means it's a non-transferable, but giving education and health services free, then he can have a possibility to reaching at the point of C. In that case, if all other goods he is consuming at the same level, but he can increase his education and health so that his human capital can be uplifted and the country can be immensely benefited in the long run. So now let's look at the case of akaf. It could be 2 types, let's say religious and philanthropic, and at the same time, if you talk about the beneficiary perspective, let's say it could be family and the general public. And from the study of Professor Abdul Hamid, it shows that the D, which is philanthropic and general public, which is basically contributed directly to socio-economic development. And unfortunately, the share of alcohol properties in the Bangladesh in D is very minimal. Now let's look at the possible sources of sustainable development goals financing. It's a study from United Nations 2014, but I have modified to show how zakat and awqaf and other Islamic tools can be fit in to this financing model. It could be domestic sources, it could be international sources, and it could be a blended financing kind of thing. So if you talk about domestic sources, again it could be public finance, and it could be also private finance. So if public, then we know the tax is a major option for a government to generate revenue. But here we will have to also emphasize that government can also collect it as an Islamic, as a government from Islamic perspectives can collect zakat and disburse from their own source. So in that case, zakat could be a source for them for public financing. And if you talk about private, then probably Waqf and zakat can both play their role. And international sources here actually for public, I have mentioned here IDB could generate an Waqf fund, can manage from their large magnitudes of financing and can massively help the Muslim countries for achievement of sustainable development goals. And blended finance is one of the way I have just shown here PPP. The model is very familiar, public-private partnership. This would be done. Now here in this slide I have shown that how financing sustainable development, especially in three areas, education, health and gender, can have benefits for the society. Especially I have immensely benefited from the works of Professor Ismail of NCF, and for education it would be, let's say, massively you can increase fund to build schools, primary schools in many parts of the country, to bring more children into education sector so that everyone can get quality education. And now actually if you look at the enrollment rate in Bangladesh, which is very great, Bangladesh is close to achieve the MDGs. And in SDGs the question is not only enrollment rate, here the question also quality education for all. So now it's not we are discussing about just only enrollment rate. Here we have to also focus on the quality, how we can also ensure the quality of education. And also there is we can expand sources for, let's say, helping the old generations, those who are not uneducated, but we can give them education so that if they get the basic education, they can help their future generations to grow. And the outcome is, if there is a better education, then there is better jobs and better results of higher income, and then their choice will be expanded, and ultimately there will be socio-economic well-being. Now let's look at the health sector, what we can do. Improving children health by immunizations programs, especially in rural and poor regions, improvement in nutrition, sanitation, maternal and health education, reducing in maternal mortality rate. And now listen, if you talk about gender perspectives, then gender inequality in economic opportunities can be lessened by providing education to all genders, boys and girls from Waqf. And in the Professor Mahsil also focused on that there should be a separate Waqf schools for boys and girls to attract pious parents to send their daughters to such schools, especially in the rural areas. Still, we have the mentality in this country, right? Sometimes, if in rural area, you will find that if there is no school for girls, then parents don't want to send their children to the school. So, which is a great loss for the country. And outcome is, if there is a positive impact on women empowerment, and educated women can earn money to improve their life quality. Okay, in that case, as time is very short, I would like to skip the portion of socio-economic development indicators in Bangladesh. And now let's go to the socio-economic role of Waqf in Bangladesh. We are going to discuss in 5 points: historical perspectives of and poverty alleviation in Bangladesh, of in education financing, healthcare financing, and in gender empowerment. Let's look at the historical perspectives. If the Waqf has played an important socio-economic role, there is no doubt. Waqf funds contributed to run large number of institutions, and some statistics from 1986 census, and this is giving this. And now challenges. This is the challenges that I would like to discuss. There is a plethora of news in print and in media. You will find that there is illegal appropriation of properties, and you will find the interesting case study. This Ainuddin Haidar and his wife Faizul Nessa, they donated around 12,500 acres of land in Dhaka, and on their land, current Banga Bhavan, and the Bangladesh Secretary is also a part of that in their land. So this is one example I am saying, and the thing is, though the documents of the land are in the possession of administration, the reality is that the government occupied a small portion of the land, and almost 90% lands are illegally occupied by many people who build permanent structures in those lands. And you will find an interesting case from this table of misappropriation of lands in the whole country. In Dhaka, around 100% is misappropriated, and in Chittagong 52%, Rajshahi almost 100%, then Rangpur is 45%, then Khulna 27%, Barishal is nearly 3%, while Sylhet is 44%. Now question here comes, why in Dhaka and Rajshahi almost all of the property has gone, whereas in Barishal they could save it, let's say only 3%. There could be an interesting study to find out why this is happening. And I'm very happy that former of administrators are here, so I think he can give some interesting insights on that. And here, if we talk about off and poverty alleviation, there is an interesting case study by empirical study also, Rahman, Jafarullah and Islam, and they find that RDS is successful to improve the living standard of rural poor people. However, RDS has failed to outreach to the hardcore poor. Those who are below 18 and above 50 are not considered as the client of RDS. And Dr. Mizan told that Zakat and Waqf Fund could be the important sources of funding the hardcore poor who are currently untouched by the RDS program. And Waqf in education financing, then obviously, of course, there is a great role in Bangladesh and this part of the world, the role of Haji Muhammad Mohsin and his fund. Many old generation scholars have got fund from his endowment fund and immensely benefited. And also in the morning session and even in the opening ceremony, it has been already mentioned University of Dhaka and its role as Waqf for land and how it is contributing immensely to the country's development. And also in healthcare financing, the medical facilities are not standard in many countries of the Muslim world. Unavailability of medical services causes poor health condition and lower life expectancy if developing Muslim world is compared with advanced industrial nations. It is a fantasy for many poor Muslim people to enjoy even primary medical care due to widespread poverty, low income and wealth. Similar picture is drawn at Bangladesh. However, like many Muslim countries, there are offer-based health services in Bangladesh, especially you can mention the Waqf of Hamdal Democratic Waqf. Is one of the largest Waqf institutions in the healthcare sector. Currently, it is marketing about 200 drugs, which are Unani and herbal in nature. It has around 200 health centers and hospitals where treatment is almost free. Another is Islamic Bank Foundation, and their hospitals also contributing a lot to this area. Then gender empowerment. Here actually, if you talk about gender empowerment, then we must talk first about how women are marginalized in the society, and how still women are not getting a lot of in lot of opportunities, not equal opportunities, and so on. So, if you just quote from the UNICEF study in 2011 in the case of Bangladesh, you will find a series of recommendations they have made to address gender equality in Bangladesh. First one is to raise awareness and educate on gender equality at all levels of society. Invest in research to better understand the different forms of gender discrimination. To assess the effectiveness of current education stipends. To adopt strategies for raising awareness to eliminate child marriage. To involve all stakeholders, especially government, civil society, private sector, media, development partners, and all other key players to promote gender equality goals. Now, if you look about all those recommendations, now need funds actually to mobilize and to operationalize all those objectives. So here we need multiple sources of funding, and I think Zakat and Waqf could be a potential source. Now, we would like to conclude this paper with a set of recommendations. First one is using Waqf proceeds for socio-economic development. then conducting census on Waqf status. Just now we have told that after 1986 there is no complete census in the country, and this is actually the first ever census in the country. So this is a really a pity for us. So we should obviously seriously look into the matter and go for a fresh census, and we should do it on a regular basis. And then further research, most of the cases you will find the research on Waqf is actually at preliminary stages. We have researches on the theoretical discussions and so on, but we need more empirical studies and case studies. Let's say for the case of Bangladesh, there are a lot of other properties even we don't know and who are contributing a lot to the socioeconomic development of Bangladesh. We need to reveal those stories through in-depth case studies. And then integrating Zakat and Waqf in government development policy. One of the reasons you will find that why there is no Islamic content in the policy of Bangladesh. If you look at the monetary policy, fiscal policy, any development policy, especially if you look at any 5-year plan, if you look at our poverty reduction strategy paper, there is no content mentioned in a single line on Islamic tools. One of the reasons is there is no presence of Islamic scholars or renowned figures in those zones. So I think it should be inclusive, and they should have a role into this policy making body so that this policy could be inclusive and we could be inclusively developed. And there is a constructing of Islamic microfinance institutions, then motivating rich men because they are the one who is going to donate after poverties. And finally, launching social movement, because I am telling you that this is not a political movement, it is ultimately a social movement. Socially, we have to conscious the people and we have to make awareness of this of the people for generating a social movement for a better future to Waqf in Bangladesh. Thank you very much for listening.